Hey, this is Stu Becker, and I just wanted to get on here and talk about Cuba and the President Miguel Diaz-Canel of Cuba. He gave a speech to the non-aligned movement. I think it was really awesome, and it just points out a lot of things. I just wanted to get on here and explain it because it comes. I read it on the Granma, which is the news of the Communist Party of Cuba. So yeah, it's just you really gotta know the other side because U.S. imperialism has its side. They say that Cuba's a dictatorship and everything like that, all that stuff. It's a brutal dictatorship, and the Communist Party of Cuba is an oppressive regime, and we have to overthrow it. It's brutal, but really, you got to look at the other side because you got to look at both sides of the story. You got to look at their side. So that's what I'm about to do right now. We're about to look at Cuba's side through this really cool speech. It was given May 4th by the president of Cuba, Miguel Diaz-Canel. Also, he gave it to the non-aligned movement. And so the non-aligned movement is interesting because from what I understand, it's a group of third world countries who got together during the time of the Cold War, and it was led by, I believe, Fidel Castro was the big leader. I think when it started, I know that he was a leader of it at one time, but it was saying that we're not on the United States side and we're not on the Soviet Union side. We're non-aligned. We're the non-aligned movement. That's why it's called the non-aligned movement. So it's a group of these third world countries, and also, that's interesting because the third world has been oppressed and exploited historically by the United States and Europe, the West. They've been exploited for their resources, their land and labor, and their markets. So those countries are the formerly colonized countries, colonized by the West, by Europe. And later, America took over. And became their oppressors, the main oppressors. American imperialism became the main oppressor. And American imperialism is still the number one imperialist country in the world today. As Huey P. Newton said, they are world enemy number one for the oppressed people. So, and also another thing is interesting is Cuba. They are a leader of the oppressed countries of the world in freeing themselves from this global exploitative and oppressive system that oppresses what some people in the United States would like to look at it, and it's pretty accurate that they oppress the people of color of the world. Although it's like that. It's probably more complicated than that, but I used to think of it as like this: the white countries oppress the non-white countries of the world. And mostly that's how it goes. Mostly. So yeah, Cuba is a leader of these oppressed countries, these formerly colonized countries. That's why the United States wants to demonize them. That's why the United States wants to demonize them and attack them and say they're a brutal dictatorship and they're so evil and Fidel Castro is just a brutal dictator. So that's what we hear repeatedly, but it's nonsense. It's hogwash. It's just BS. So, I want to read. I'm gonna read like some of these passages, the most important parts. I wanted to read the most important parts, but I was going through it to try to find the most important parts. But the whole speech is really freaking interesting. So I'm going to go through some paragraphs and then explain it a little bit and then keep reading some more. So, yeah, speech Miguel Diaz-Canel gave to the non-aligned movement. Here we go. Due to its seriousness, I must denounce the terrorist attack with an assault rifle and over 30 rounds that struck our embassy in Washington on April 30th last and demand from the United States government a thorough and swift investigation, harsh sanctions and security measures, and guarantees for our diplomatic missions in its territory, as it must do under the 1961 Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. So yeah, apparently, I haven't really studied that super closely, but just a few days ago, there was a terrorist attack on the Cuban embassy in the United States. So I haven't looked into it completely, but it just goes into, I think it's all part and parcel of the United States' overall attack on Cuba and countries that want to break free from U.S. imperialism. Like the main one is Cuba. They're the most heroic. They're one of the most heroic countries in the world. And we're going to go over some more about why that is when we go through this speech. But here we go. Non-aligned movement has shown its relevance in the present world situation. That is attested by the communiques that have been adopted in support of the World Health Organization and concerning COVID-19, and which call for global unity and international solidarity and cooperation, for also putting aside political differences and eliminating unilateral coercive measures which violate international law and the United Nations Charter and limit the capacity of states to deal with the pandemic efficiently. So I think what the interesting part about that is, so first off, yeah, he's calling for global unity and solidarity. And that's the big word that revolutionaries use, that communists use, socialists use. We use the word solidarity. That means everybody being united and helping each other. Wouldn't that be amazing? Because humans are social beings. We need each other to survive. If we're one person on its own, you would not survive. If you were by yourself, off in the woods by yourself, you can't survive. And you see just right now, social distancing, so many people are getting depressed because of loneliness. And people get lonely. Because you need people. Humans are not meant to be by themselves. They're social beings. So that's what Cuba promotes. Solidarity. The unity of all people. Isn't that great? I think that is amazing. But yet, the U.S. demonizes them and calls them a dictatorship, blah, blah, blah. So, also, he said, putting aside political differences and eliminating unilateral coercive measures which violate international law. Unilateral coercive measures which violate international law at the United Nations Charter and limit the capacity of states to deal with the pandemic efficiently. So I think what he's talking about there is unilateral. That means one country making decisions, I believe. Coercive measures. I think what he's talking about there is the sanctions that the United States imposes on the countries that want to break free from their oppression, their oppressive system, such as Cuba, Iran, Venezuela, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, probably Nicaragua, but I'm not sure what kind of sanctions they put on there. But sanctions, things that, from what I understand, and I'm still learning, they want to make the country poor. They want to make it so the country can't get resources. And this punishes not the government, but the people. And it makes the people starve and suffer. So that's what the United States empire does. And that's what they're doing right now. I've read that they're putting sanctions on Iran and making them have a more difficult time during this pandemic. When Iran has been hit hard by the pandemic, they're putting sanctions on them and making it more difficult for them to deal with the pandemic. Now, what kind of world leader is that? First off, the pandemic, it'll affect all of us. The pandemic doesn't care what country you're in. If one country gets really hit hard with it, people could travel out of that country and go to another country. They could go to the United States and get other people sick. So you should help every country try to stop the pandemic. You should help every country to get rid of COVID-19. All countries should be united. But no, the United States wants to sanction countries and make it harder for them to deal with the pandemic. So that's the United States empire. So, here we go again. Unilateral measures. There we go. So COVID-19 has proven to be a global challenge. It goes beyond borders, ideologies, or levels of development. Therefore, the answer to it must also be global and joint and it should put political differences aside. So yeah, that's obvious. All countries should work together in fighting the pandemic. So that's what he's saying. All countries should work together, but like I said, the United States is not doing that. The United States empire is not doing that. And here we go. We'll keep going some more. We'll probably get into that more later. It is not possible to predict exactly the extent of its consequences. The high figures of infected persons and many human deaths are showing its devastating impact in an increasingly interconnected world, which still has not been able to make use of such interconnection for the sake of solidarity, and is paying today the price for its inability to correct social disbalance. It should be stated openly, had we made solidarity global as it was done with the market, the story would have been different. So yeah, like you're saying, the market, they want the market global. They want to make the market global. That's what capitalism, it's all about the market. It's all about profit making. It's not about solidarity. It's not about solidarity. It's about the market and profit making. So if we had prepared, like you see socialist countries being more prepared to deal with these disasters, like Vietnam, 98 million people, 0 deaths from COVID-19, even though they share a border with China. You look at Cuba, they're doing pretty well, although I've seen that they have some deaths, but I don't know the exact figures on that. I've seen Venezuela doing well in stopping the pandemic because these countries put people before profit. So, and also you see Cuba, they're very well prepared to deal with disasters. I've heard that like during hurricanes, nobody dies during hurricanes in Cuba because they evacuate all the people. Not only do they evacuate all the people, but they evacuate all your animals. I think farm animals and pets and things like that. All the people get evacuated. They're prepared to deal with disasters. The United States is not prepared to deal with disasters like this because it's run by capitalists, these profit makers, these huge corporations, and all they care about is profit making. It's the anarchy of production. Capitalism is the anarchy of production. That means profit making comes first. Profit making comes before everything, not solidarity, not working together, not creating social cohesion. Profit making. That's why you see all these problems of poverty and just all this social bad stuff in this American capitalist system. If you look at it, if you don't have just a white view, if you look at what's happening to people of color, what's happening to black people, Mexican people, and stuff like that. Anyway, we'll get into more of that later. Or maybe another video. There is a lack of solidarity and cooperation. Those values cannot be replaced with profit making, which is almost the only incentive for those who worship the market while forgetting about the value of human life. So there you go again. Worship the market while forgetting about the value of human life. So there you go again. Talking about capitalism. Capitalism, the difference between capitalism and socialism is capitalism is profits. As Mao Zedong said, profits are in command in capitalism. That's the difference between capitalism and socialism. Profits are in command in capitalism. In socialism, no. The needs of society are first. Okay? Socialism, the needs of society are number one. And socialism is when a working class party takes state power, or one of my friends said that no, they don't take state power. They smash the capitalist state. And okay, that's cool, yeah. Smash the capitalist state. Well, that's just figurative language. Really, because of course we prefer nonviolent revolution. So disassemble the capitalist state. And then they nationalize the major factories, major industries, and banks. The major means of production are nationalized and brought under the state's control, under the leadership of the working class. And then you're producing for the needs of all society. And some people, I think also even private businesses, I want to point out when I say that, private businesses are allowed, though. I mean, small businesses and some stuff are allowed, but the major centers of economic power, the resources, the banks, the major factories like energy, major resources are nationalized and you produce for the needs of all society. That's the thing. Socialism produced for the needs of society. Capitalism produced for profits. So, there you go. We'll go to the next one. An analysis of the events that have disturbed humanity in the last 4 months must include the costly mistakes of neoliberal policies, which led to a downsizing of state management and capabilities, excessive privatizations, and a neglect of the majorities. So yeah, neoliberal policies, costly mistakes of the neoliberal policies. Neoliberalism, from what I understand, is an economic system. It's all about privatization. Privatize everything. They love privatization. They want to make a profit out of everything. Even public education. These capitalists want to make a profit off public education. So privatize everything. Because like they think that everything is better when it's private. Because they want to make money. So anyway, privatize everything. What else? What else? Led to a downsizing of state management and capability. So yeah, get rid of the public sphere. No more state management, just profit. No more state. Socialism utilizes a state. Socialism utilizes a state for public good. Downsizing of state management capabilities, excessive privatizations, and a neglect of the majority. So yeah, you neglect the majority, as he's saying. You neglect the people. It's all only about making money. Making money before everything. And this has many problems. For example, capitalism, we don't solve climate change. We don't solve the problem of global warming because the main polluters, the main emitters of carbon dioxide are the oil companies. And those oil companies seem like they control the world economy. And they control, I think they're tied in with the banks too. So we don't solve climate change because it's all about profit making. And it's really stupid. It's just a stupid system. This pandemic has evidenced the fragility of a fractured and excluding world. Not even those who are most fortunate and powerful would survive in the absence of those whose work create and sustain wealth. Let me read that again. Not even those who are most fortunate and powerful would survive in the absence of those whose work create and sustain wealth. So, I think what he's saying there is, as we see, the workers create all the value in the world. The workers create all the value in the world. And the capitalists, their wealth comes from the workers. Their wealth comes from the workers. That's surplus, the theory of surplus value. So they pay the workers a wage, but then the workers create way more value than that. And the extra value that the workers create, the capitalists take as profit. So the capitalists get rich by exploiting the workers, the working class. So yeah, the workers are essential. As we see, the essential workers are the ones who make the economy, not the CEOs, not the billionaires, not the bankers. The workers are the ones that keep the economy going. It's the workers that create all the wealth in society. And Marxists say that they should take the wealth that they create and we should share it. And then we'd be way better off. And I heard Sarah Nelson, a leader of the flight attendants union, say the workers create all the wealth, so they should capture it. And she just said that on May Day, and I thought that was awesome because she's a union leader. But anyway, where we at? So yeah, the workers create. It's all about the workers. The workers create everything valuable in the world. Just want to make sure I covered that. The multiple crises it is bringing about foretell ravaging and lasting effects for the economy and all the spheres of society. So yeah, I'm not sure what he's getting at. I'm not sure how it'll affect globally. I'm sure it'll have a big effect. But I know in the United States, the 30%, they're talking about there's going to be a worse crisis just as bad or worse than the Great Depression. 30% unemployment. So we've seen that. People losing their jobs and all that. Everybody knows that. I don't have to tell you that. So everybody knows that it's creating economic chaos. And we need the state to take care of us. We need the state. We need to all come together and work together. And the corporations trying to make money won't take care of us because all they care about is making money. Anyway, pandemic is worsening the pressing problems in a planet riddled with deep inequalities and where 600 million people are living in dire poverty and nearly half of the population have no access to basic health services, whose management is defined by the market and not by the noble goal of saving lives. Whose management is defined by the market and not by the noble goal of saving lives. So yeah, this is what I love about Cuba. They always, and Fidel Castro always exposed the poverty of the third world, like the global poverty, the health inequalities, how the West is rich. The West is rich and the third world, or the most of the other world, is poor. And the West get rich by exploiting the third world. And so Cuba and Fidel Castro, he's always exposed this. And then they talk about they lack basic health services. And so, yeah, it seems like the health services in Africa are abysmal, I've heard, and stuff like that, in the third world. But that's why Cuba, their socialist country, has specialized in training doctors, and they are famous for their healthcare system. They have a world-renowned healthcare system. They send doctors all over the world. So they have famous for their splendid healthcare system. And so, yeah. In the meantime, global military expenditures are over $1.9 trillion, of which more than 38%, or $732 billion, were appropriated in the United States in 2020. Global military. Okay, so yeah, United States, their global military expenditures. I don't know the exact figures. He's saying $1.9 trillion and 38%, or $732 billion, were appropriated by the United States. So the United States is the number one spender on military worldwide. The United States, they're the leaders of war in the world. They have 800 military bases worldwide. They love war. They're all about war. Why? Why? People say, oh, it's because they want to protect us. They're the number one spender of military in the world, and all the other, I think I've read the next 8 countries combined don't add up to the amount that the United States spends. But the reason why is because the United States is an empire, and they oppress the world in order to maintain wealthy, to steal the resources of the world, as Michael Parenti says, to make the world safe for the international corporations, the transnational corporations, to make it safe for them, to exploit the third world, to keep them oppressed, to keep them slaves. That's why the United States spends money on military. It's not to keep us safe. It's not to keep us safe. It's to oppress the world. So, and he's pointing that out. And some might say the contradiction, or the hypocrisy, or that crazy fact. So here we go. I wish to share with you this quotation from the commander-in-chief of the Cuban Revolution, Fidel Castro Ruz. Instead of spending so much in the development of increasingly sophisticated weapons, those having resources for that should promote medical research and put the results of science at the service of humanity, thus creating tools for health and life and not for death. So yeah, he's saying this makes perfect sense. The U.S. spends so much, trillions, billions, trillions, or I don't know how much, billions on military, and they should instead, why do you spend that much on death and destruction and killing? They should spend it on healthcare and ending poverty and housing, good housing for all, and infrastructure to serve the people, serve the needs of people, and education. And so, and ending poverty. With all the money that the U.S. spends on military, you can end poverty. So, here we go. Let us call together with the Secretary General of the United Nations for the end of wars, including non-conventional ones, so as to safeguard the right to peace. So the end of wars. He's calling for the end of wars. Like, he's calling for peace. And the greatest purveyor of war in the world today, as Martin Luther King said, is the United States, and still is. So the United States is the one they're making war. They make war all over the world, in the Middle East, all over the world. They want war. It's sick and it's irrational. It doesn't make any sense, and it's for profit. Because capitalism's for profit. So he's calling for end of war. So what's wrong with that? Why are we demonizing Cuba? They're calling for peace and they want to give people health care, but yet they're a brutal dictatorship. So dumb. That's why you gotta read. You gotta read. Anyway, we reject the recent and serious military threats by the government of the United States against the sisterly Republic of Venezuela. So yeah, the United States is threatening Venezuela. They've been threatening Venezuela because Venezuela is trying to give their people free health care too. Venezuela is trying to help the poor in their country. Well, actually, the United Socialist Movement, the Bolivarian Revolution. Nicolas Maduro, the president, and previously Hugo Chavez, they're trying to help the poor. They're trying to end poverty. They want solidarity. They want another system, a system without poverty and racism, a different system of equality and solidarity. So that's why the United States has been attacking them repeatedly, constantly. And they keep messing with them. And just recently, they found, I got to look into this story more, they found these 2 mercenaries from the United States trying to overthrow, but constantly threats. And they said they declared Juan Guaido the president, okay? They declared Juan Guaido the president, somebody who would support the United States. So all these threats. And in 2002, they tried to overthrow Hugo Chavez. And they took him out, and then the people brought him back to power because the people they seem very united and determined. And most of them want socialism. Well, I could talk about that more, I'm sure, other ones. We reaffirm our solidarity with the government and the people of Nicaragua and reject measures against their right to well-being, security, and peace. So they want solidarity with Nicaragua because Nicaragua. So like the United States, John Bolton and Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of Defense of the United States. These guys are like crazy psychopaths, demons, warmongers. They say that Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua are the troika of tyranny. They say that they're the troika of tyranny because they want socialism too. Nicaragua, Daniel Ortega is the president, and they are united with Venezuela and Cuba, and they are in a group called the Bolivarian Alliance, ALBA, of Latin America. So that's why they're threatening them too. Same reason. Because anybody who, not just socialism, anybody who tries to break free of the U.S. empire and tries to have a different system, they don't want to be dominated under the U.S. empire, the United States will attack. They've seen this historically. They will attack and threaten and try to overthrow them. And also they hate socialism too. And they hate socialism because it represents an alternative, the exact diametrical opposite to capitalism, an alternative to the rule of the ruling class, of the exploiting class, the rich capitalist class. That's why they really hate socialism. Really, they will attack you. It won't just be about socialism. It could be about just being independent from imperialism, or really, and also socialism too. They hate socialism. The attempts at reimposing the neo-colonial past to our America by publicly declaring the validity of the Monroe Doctrine are running counter the proclamation of Latin America and the Caribbean as a zone of peace. So, attempting to reimposing the neo-colonial past in the Monroe Doctrine. So yeah, Neocolonialism. So colonialism is when one country dominates another country for its resources and dominates the people and exploits the people. And neocolonialism is when the colonized country they threw off official colonialism, but then the empire, the imperialist European and American countries, European and America, they imposed leaders on them of their own people, their own presence, like gave them flag independence, but they still exploited the resources. So you'll have like in Africa, you have a black president in charge, an African president in charge, but he's like a servant to the West, the United States and Europe, and they allow the United States and Europe to steal the resources continually. So yeah, Cuba always talks about neocolonialism. So it's like it's new colonialism where the empire is still in control, but they just have a puppet. They have a puppet in these third world countries to continue to steal the resources. Okay, to continue colonialism. Okay, if that makes sense. So, and the Monroe Doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine was when the United States, they first declared that Latin America as the backyard of the United States. And they said, all European countries keep out. This is our territory. We're going to steal the resources here. So Simon Bolivar predicted this, that the United States would come in and dominate them. After they threw off the shackles of mostly Spanish colonialism, the United States would come dominate them. And that's what happened. The Monroe Doctrine. The United States says that Latin America is just theirs. They think that all of the world is theirs. They just want to take all the resources of the world. Okay? That's the Monroe Doctrine. They want to take over Latin America for its resources and for its cheap labor and make them slaves and suffer. So, in this complex situation, the United States is attacking multilateralism, and it disqualifies unjustly the role of international organizations, particularly the World Health Organization. So the United States is attacking multilateralism and disqualifies unjustly the role of international organizations, particularly the World Health Organization. I'm not quite sure what he's getting at with the World Health Organization. Somebody might maybe help me out with that. But like attacking multilateralism, that's like they want to be unilateral. They want to be the one making decisions. They don't want a multipolar world. They don't want to work together with people, with other countries. They want to be the unilateral and tell people what to do. This is what the U.S. empire is famous for around the world. Your Excellencies, at the 18th Non-Alignment Movement Summit in Baku in October 2019, we called for the strengthening of the movement in the face of international challenges, convinced that only unity would save us. It is the role of the Non-Aligned Movement to lead actions toward the write-off of the uncollectible foreign debt, which burdens our countries, for the lifting of unilateral coercive measures being imposed on some of our nations as they, together with the social and economic effects of COVID-19, are threatening the sustainable development of the peoples. So he's saying the non-aligned movement lead actions to get rid of the uncollectible foreign debt, because the United States and the West, they have the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, and they got these countries, these formerly colonized countries, into debt. It's crazy. The U.S. and Europe are the ones that steal the resources, but then they give them these loans with all these attachments, and now these colonial countries are in debt. So they want to get rid of this debt. It's not fair. It's just a trap. It's a trick. It was a trick by these bullies and these exploiters. It's almost like a loan shark in the poor communities in the United States, to my understanding. So they're calling for Cuba as a hero and calling to get rid of the debt of the colonized countries, the formerly colonized countries, the countries dominated by neocolonialism and imperialism. What else does he say? So I thought that was interesting. That was a good point. For the lifting of unilateral... and for the lifting of unilateral coercive measures being imposed on some of our nations as they, together with social and economic effects of COVID-19, are threatening the sustainable development of the peoples. I think he's saying the lifting of unilateral coercive measures. I think he's talking about the sanctions, because the United States put sanctions on these countries to make them poor and make the people starve. And that's what they've been doing to Cuba for all these years, making the people suffer, because they don't allow the people to get medical supplies. They don't allow Cuba to get medical under the blockade. They don't allow them to get medical supplies. They don't allow them to get foodstuffs. They don't allow them to get technologies. So it's made them poor, made them suffer. So in 1960, whatever the year was, 1961, or whenever the U.S. imposed the blockade, what's called the embargo on Cuba, they said that they wanted, the U.S. said this, the goal was to make the people starve and make them revolt against the revolutionary government. That's the goal, to attack the people, not even the government, to attack the people. And they say, oh, they're for democracy, and they're for democracy, they want to have a democratic government, and they want to get rid of dictatorship. But they put these brutal measures and make the people suffer and starve. And that's what they do to Cuba. And that's what they do to Venezuela. That's what they've been doing to Iran, like I pointed out earlier, I think. And other countries, too. I'm sure the DPRK, although I haven't studied as much on the sanctions that they've imposed on those countries, on them. And they're sanctioning Venezuela's CLAP food program. They have a food program to help poor communities. They give out free food, but I heard that they're making it difficult. They want to make it difficult for them to even do that. Okay? So, it's threatening the sustainable development of the peoples. The sustainable development, they want to, well, I don't even know if I want to get into that. If I was teaching my 9th graders, we would talk about development mostly to sustain the environment. But I don't know if I should go that low on this. But development to sustain the environment, that's what sustainable development is, to what I understand. And other stuff than that. But we'll move on. We must face selfishness and be aware that assistance from the industrialized North shall be scarce. We have to complement each other, share what we have, support ourselves mutually, and learn from the successful experiences. A useful choice could be resuming in the future the annual meetings of non-aligned movement health ministers in the framework of the World Health Assembly. So yeah, he's saying we won't get help from the North, the industrialized North, the United States and Europe. The global North and the global South. They're not going to get help from the global North, the Europe and America. And it's funny, they say, 50 countries support Juan Guaido. 50 countries around the world say Juan Guaido is the president. But guess what? Who are those countries? If you look at all the countries, it's the United States and Western Europe, mostly. And Australia, the Western countries were saying that Juan Guaido is the president. Meanwhile, Russia and China and most of the African countries around the world and not the sellout Latin American countries, but most of the other countries of the world, most of the poor, the third world, the people of color, non-white countries around the world, they say, no, Nicolas Maduro is the president. So yeah, or maybe Russia. I can't remember Russia, I can't remember. I thought maybe they said that. Maybe they also, I don't know, they agreed that Juan Guaido. I don't know, I gotta go revisit that. But anyway, so the industrialized North, that's the North and the South. I just want to thought of that for a second. So they gotta work together. The third world, these formerly colonized countries, they're trying to come together to create a new system. They have to unite. That's what Marx says. Workers of the world, unite. You only have your chains to lose. But yeah, they're trying to unite to throw off the oppressor, because the oppressed have to unite to throw off the oppressor, because The oppressed wants to keep the oppressor divided. They want to keep the oppressor. The oppressor wants to keep the oppressed divided because that's the way they survive. So there's Cuba is a hero and a leader, and they want the third world and the colonized countries to unite. So Cuba is ready to share experiences with the non-aligned movement countries to which it is bound by historical ties of friendship. For Cuba, the challenge has been a mammoth one. In the months prior to the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak, we were already facing a ruthless tightening of the U.S. economic, commercial, and financial blockade policy aimed at bringing our trade and access to fuels and foreign currency to a full standstill. So yes, the U.S. putting their blockade and making Cuba poor. I always try to revisit like what exactly that entails, and it's like a lot of details. Sometimes details for me are really hard to remember, but yeah, it basically makes the country poor and makes them, from what I remember, not allowed to get foodstuffs, to get medicine, to get technology, to just not allow them to trade with other countries. They just want to punish Cuba for trying to be free. And of course, they're bullies, they're oppressors. So they're really cowardly and disgusting. Anyway, so they want to make them poor and suffer. So the people overthrow Cuba, the Cuban Communist Party. Anyway, through tremendous effort and sacrifice, we have been able, under such conditions, to keep in place our universal and free public health system that has dedicated and highly qualified professionals who enjoy world prestige in spite of the crude and slanderous campaigns by powerful adversaries. Yeah, they enjoy world prestige. So Cuba, they have a world-renowned healthcare system. Everybody knows about the Cuban healthcare system. Okay, everybody around the world knows it's famous because they train doctors for free. They get doctors from all over the world come. People from Africa, Latin America, Asia, even the United States. Poor people, mostly they try to get poor, mostly black people and brown people in the U.S. to go there and study medicine. But then they say, well, you're gonna help the poor people of the world. You're gonna go and you're gonna help Cuba, and then you're gonna go around the world and serve the poor and help the poor get health care. And isn't that a noble and beautiful cause? Isn't that amazing? They want to serve humanity, and they're heroes. They're heroes. They go to Africa, who has been exploited brutally by European colonialism and slavery, and they've tried to help Africa get free from colonialism. They're heroes. And not only do they send doctors, but they send military to try to, in Angola, to fight off the apartheid South African government. And so they're heroes. Great. And then when they went to Italy, they were welcomed there, and they helped when Italy was in really bad shape. They went to Italy, and they're in all these other countries, sending doctors to all countries all over the world, Latin America and Africa and Europe, anywhere that needs help. So that's amazing. It's just shows how great Cuba it really is. It's so beautiful. It's amazing. That's why I love Cuba. It's such an inspiration to me. Through tremendous effort and sacrifice, we have been able, under such conditions, to keep in place our universal... Oh, wait, I already said that. Oh, yeah, they've been slandered by campaigns of powerful adversaries. So, yeah, I saw somebody say, oh, they're only there to get... It's for selfish reasons. Oh, really? They're going to poor countries for selfish reasons. Yeah, right. Or they went to Africa to fight off the South African racist government for selfish reasons and die. Yeah, right. Anyway, the ones that's selfish is the United States. But, sorry, I'm getting too emotional right now. Maybe I'm getting too passionate or something. But anyway, through tremendous effort and sacrifice... Oh, wait, I already did that 3 times. So the early warning signs on the possibility that COVID-19 would become a pandemic came in the midst of this suffocating context of an economic war, and that made challenges bigger. Yeah. Okay. Right away, we drew a plan including measures based on our strengths, a well-structured state that has the responsibility to protect the health of its citizens in a society with mass involvement as to decision making and giving solutions to its problems. Oh, God, this speech is so good. Anyway, so a well-structured state, a government of action. That's what Caleb Maupin says. A government of action to fight for working families. A well-structured state that has the responsibility to protect the health. Because we have a do-nothing government right now. That's what Caleb Maupin is pointing out. We have a do-nothing government. It's a capitalist country. And they don't help people. That's why we have the most COVID-19 cases in the world, from what I understand. We're doing the worst in the world. But they have a well-structured state and to protect the health of its citizens. That's what their main goal is, not unlike the U.S. And a society with mass involvement. Oh, that's another important thing. The mass involvement as to decision-making and giving solutions to the problem. And you know what's funny? They always say, oh, I bet when they get out Fidel Castro, it's going to be different and the United States is going to take over. That's what people think. They think it's just a dictatorship. It's a dictatorship, one man, and bullshit. Hell no. They organize the masses of the people. They get everybody involved. They have true democracy, from what I understand. I know it's not perfect. I don't know everything. But from what I understand, that's what socialism is all about. Mass involvement and mass participation. Like, for instance, I'm living in an apartment complex right now. They would have community councils, and you would know all your neighbors. And they get together, and they plan, and they elect certain representatives from the community. That's what socialism does. And I don't know. I don't know all the details on Cuba, but I've heard that that's that type of system there. So the point is they want mass involvement, mass participation. And that's what socialism is all about. It's not dictatorship. It's true democracy. Well, it's the dictatorship of the proletariat. That's what the theory is. Dictatorship of the proletariat. That means the dictatorship of the working class. That means the masses, the working class, the working people decide, not the bosses. Not the corporate capitalist exploiting bosses. The working people decide. The working people decide. So that's true democracy, in my opinion. So let's see. Mass involvement as to decision makings and giving solutions to its problems. So yeah, mass involvement. All the people. They organize all the people. Like I said, I'll reiterate this. I don't know if I explained. But I live in an apartment and nobody here knows each other, which hopefully we could change that soon. But people don't talk because that's how capitalism is. Everybody's out for themselves. But in there, everybody knows each other from what I've heard. And everybody works together and they plan stuff on a local level and they elect local officials. But anyway, let's see. The work resulting from years of resource appropriations to develop and strengthen health services and sciences, which has been put to a test in the evolution of the epidemic in Cuba in the last 2 months, is showing the good impact of social investment policies may have when facing the biggest and most unexpected challenges. So yeah, the good impact that social investment policies may have. So yeah, like when you prepare your system for a pandemic, like Richard Wolff said, we should have been prepared, but we're not. But we know that a pandemic is coming. We know that viruses have always been here. So we should have been prepared, and that's what a socialist country does. They prepare for stuff like that. And you have social investments, you could prepare. You can prepare for these huge problems. And so it's showing that they're doing pretty well. And Vietnam is doing pretty well. And China, they've fought it off for now too, even though they were struck with it first. Anyway, in spite of the huge constraints being imposed on us by the protracted U.S. economic, commercial, and financial blockade that are posing a big daily challenge to keeping our public health system in place, and facing this pandemic in particular, we have ensured the right to health of the Cuban people with the involvement of society as a whole. So he's talking about the U.S. economic, commercial, and financial blockade like we talked about earlier. So it does make it hard for them, and I don't fully understand, can't fully understand how, because I don't live there and I've never been there. But it makes it hard for them and their public health system. But they're fighting through it, and they're going to continue to fight because they've been fighting all this time. We have ensured the right to health of the Cuban people with the involvement of the society as a whole. So yeah, they include all society, like I was saying and everything earlier. Mass participation. Scientific development has allowed us to treat different communicable diseases successfully, both in Cuba and in other nations. Scientific development. This time, the pharmaceutical industry has expanded the manufacturing of drugs of proven efficacy to prevent and deal with COVID-19 that we have shared with other countries. So they've developed this drug, alpha interferon 2B. I think I remember that right. It's an antiviral drug that we never hear about here in the United States, but it helps fight off COVID-19. It's an antiviral drug, and they actually, from what I read, I've read that they helped develop it, and they got it from Texas and stuff like that, and there's a whole long detailed history about it, but their health system is really good. I've also heard that before this they cured HIV from woman to child, giving birth, stuff like that. They come through with all these breakthroughs because they're dedicated to public health, not profits. In response to requests that were made in the last month, 25 new medical brigades of Cuban health professionals have joined the efforts in 23 countries to fight the pandemic. They have joined those who have been providing services already in 59 states, many of which were non-aligned movement members. So they send doctors all over the world to poor countries, the non-aligned movement members, the oppressed of the world. They help the oppressed of the world fight off diseases. Okay? So think about that, how great that is. A poor country who they say is a dictatorship is sending doctors all over the world. It's called solidarity. That's what socialism is all about. Solidarity, unity, serving the needs of the people, serving the needs of the world. That's what socialism is all about. Love and compassion. And that's what Cuba is. Cuba is a hero. As Fidel Castro said, the Cuban Revolution has done the most for the human being. That's what Fidel Castro said. The Cuban Revolution has done the most for the human being out of any revolution. It's so heroic. So, for humanity, thank God for Cuba. Thank God. Cuba shall not give up its solidarity vocation, even when, out of political reasons, the U.S. government continues attacking and obstructing the international cooperation being provided by our country, which jeopardizes access to health services for tens of millions of people. Cuba shall not give up. Let's read that again. Cuba shall not give up its solidarity vocation, even when, out of political reasons, the U.S. government continues attacking and obstructing the international cooperation being provided by our country, which jeopardizes access to health services for tens of millions of people. So yeah, the United States is obstructing cooperation people. Of course, they're imperialists, they're capitalists. They want to dominate. It's the rich. The rich get rich by exploiting the poor, and they divide and conquer. They want to divide people and dominate. So, but Cuba is trying to unite people. Well, revolutionaries are uniting the working class and the oppressed, and trying to end poverty and suffering and oppression. That's what revolutionaries are all about. It's almost over. We have a responsibility to combine our willingness and efforts to face this immense challenge. Let us promote international cooperation and solidarity. Let us promote international cooperation and solidarity. Our endeavor shall be decisive. Let us do it. Let us do it for the right of our peoples to health, peace, and development, fully abiding by the founding principles of the non-alignment movement. Let's do it for life. Thank you very much. So yeah, that's what socialism all about. International cooperation. Everybody working together. Beauty. Humanity working together. solidarity, unity amongst people. People, I help you and you help me. Everybody working together. Uh, uh, for health, for peace, not war. The United States wants war. The United States wants war all over the world. They're in 800 countries. They have military bases in 800 countries all over the world. They're going to war with, I don't know, however many it is, 10 countries at once, dropping bombs. It's Cuba that wants peace. They want to end war. We want to end war. People who are revolutionaries, we want to end war. And for life. We do it for life. For life. That's what Nicolas Maduro said. Socialism is the system of life. Capitalism, neoliberal capitalism, the system of death. So life. We want to protect life. That's what it's all about. Serving humanity. Because why are we in a society? What's the point of a society? It's called the social contract, that the people get together and surrender a little bit. They say they surrender a little bit of their individuality and to live in a group. But I think it's better to live in a group, me personally, than being way better. You can't live by yourself. But anyway, and plus we're human. We're above animals. Human being is an idea. We're above animals. We think and we reason. And we can ration and we can make the environment serve us. I believe Frederick Engels said that. We make the environment serve us. Human beings can think and reason and ration. So that's why we're in society. To serve each other. To advance. Because human beings constantly advance. We're constantly advance. That's our instinct. Because we're not animals. We're humans. We're above animals. Now, a lion can go kill a hyena or whatever, and nobody cares. But humans, we can't kill each other because we think and we reason, and we're higher than animals. We're higher, or we like to think of ourselves. But U.S. imperialism, this system of U.S. imperialism has us acting like animals, and capitalism wants to have us acting like animals. Because animals, all they care about is eating, sleeping, and having sex. So, anyway, and going to war. And Fidel Castro said that, I believe that human beings are still in the prehistory. We're still in our prehistory. That's something like Fidel Castro said. We're in our prehistory. And we haven't gotten to start our real history yet. We won't act like animals anymore. We will act civilized, and we will use science and reason to advance and end poverty and end war and end racism and end sexism and end all these forms of oppression. And that's when we do that. That's when we will enter true history. And we will act like human beings, like we're supposed to act, and we will have a society like it's supposed to be, to serve humanity. And that's what socialism and Cuba is all about, serving humanity. Okay? So yeah, that's what I just wanted to share that article with you because I thought it was really good. And I wanted to talk about it and talk about socialism and talk about Cuba. So thanks for listening. And yeah, talk to you later.